For more on the story, we are now joined via Skype from Tehran, Iran, by political analyst Heba Morad. Heba, good evening and thank you for joining us on The Globe.
Good evening and thank you for having me.
Now, Heba, how is former Prime Minister Hariri's resignation affecting politics in Lebanon and the Middle East, respectively?
Well, of course, the resignation of the Prime Minister Saad Hariri in such a critical moment can push the situation into chaos, especially in the light of the instability in the entire region. This could be really dangerous and it could have serious implications. However, touching on the protests, it is important and worth noting that the protests seem to be hijacked, and this is what many analysts say, and this is what people see as well, especially since after almost 2 weeks from the beginning of the protests, it seems that the majority of the people protesting, the nature of the people protesting has shifted from the poor or the poor working class to middle upper class. There has been also foreign intervention seen on the ground.
Now, the reason I was asking that question is because of the effects of Iraq and what Iraq is going through now with the protests. Is this resignation going to further spur their determination to fight on? And the fact that, as you say, that there's changes in the dynamics of the people who are protesting on the ground now. It's more also the middle class or upper class, so to speak.
Yes, well, as I said, the resignation of Saad Hariri, the prime minister, might drag Lebanon into chaos, and the region is also unstable. Of course, we do not see here that foreign players like Saudi Arabia or the Emiratis or the Americans are clear-handed from this. They have been trying to cause strife and unrest in the region for years now, and it seems that they have been angered by the stability in the region that's been seen during the past 2 years at least. So many analysts as well see foreign intervention in the region.
Hariri's announcement came several hours after reports of hundreds of youth, overrunning protest sites in downtown Beirut. Do we know who these youth are and why they took these measures?
Yes, since the beginning of the protests, schools and institutions and companies and banks have been shut down because of the situation, because of the protests. Now, at the beginning of the protests, the protesters and the demonstrations had just rights and were calling for their rights and demands. However, after a few days, the nature of the protests changed and the protests shifted into something that had foreign intervention. It clearly showed foreign intervention. For instance, there is this American citizen, Robert Gallagher, who worked in Lebanon and has been residing in Lebanon since 2007. He has been going to the protest sites and telling people that we need to see a parallel government to the current government. You should take action. Also, these locals who headed to the streets today are reported as people from the working and poor classes. They headed to the streets to actually try to remove the bandits who are closing and shutting these roads. They're blocking the roads. People are unable to go anywhere. The Minister of Health reported that more than 2,000 cancer patients have not been able to arrive to the centers to take their medication. Medicines are also stuck at the customs because there is no money from the banks since the banks are shut down. There is no money to pay and clear the medicines from the customs. So the locals themselves, the poor people, the lower and working class are suffering from these roads being blocked at the time when also the nature of the protest has changed. And obviously we see foreign meddling in this picture.
Now, one of the observations often mentioned is that demonstrators come from all walks of life, cutting across sectarian identities and regions, in a common message: enough is enough. Is this a fair observation?
We can say this is a fair observation at the beginning of the protests. It was clear that yes, all people from all walks of life were participating. They had similar demands. They have been suffering from dire living circumstances because of the bad economy and because of the expensive life and because of lack of infrastructure and services and very high taxes. However, after a few days, the nature shifted. As I mentioned earlier to you, people like Robert Gallagher, who interfered on the ground. And another similar person to this is Fadlo Khouri, who is the head of the American University of Beirut. The American University of Beirut usually claims not to interfere in Lebanese political affairs. However, he was on the ground with the protesters, guiding them on what to do, giving them educational sit-ins on how to deal with the situation. Of course, the protests are leaderless, and this was probably a mistake since the very beginning. Honest people were on the streets demanding change. However, facts show that unfortunately the protests were hijacked in a way or another.
Are the protesters willing to go all the way in ensuring that there's a complete overhaul of the political system in Lebanon?
As I said, also, protesters have been demanding their rights. They want to put food on the table, basically. However, with the current situation, with the Prime Minister resigning and pushing Lebanon into chaos, the situation has become very difficult. And we're not sure the protesters will overhaul the government. In fact, the Lebanese people see that they have to be careful not to drag Lebanon into vacuum and chaos.
Hariri, it's become clear the fact that, Heba, sorry, it's become clear that the Shiite Muslim group Hezbollah would prefer to be on the side of the current status quo right now. How is this affecting daily living among Lebanese?
Yes, well, when we talk about Hezbollah, which is the resistance movement in Lebanon, whether it's media reports or experts or even the facts on the ground, the resistance movement has proved to be a party in Lebanon, and it has been defending Lebanon in face of Israeli occupation. It liberated Lebanon in 2000 from Israeli occupation as well. And it's worth noting here that the Hezbollah leader, Said Hassan Nasrallah, at the beginning of the protests, he praised the protesters and said that everyone in the country has these same exact demands. However, the Lebanese people should be keen on the security and stability of Lebanon and should make sure no one hijacks the revolution. And he clearly stated that this is his fear, stating that there is information of foreign meddling coming on the way.
Where to from here for Lebanese citizens on the ground in terms of how they feel with what's happening? As you say, the Hezbollah group has called it a revolution. How do the people on the ground basically feel at this point in time?
Well, people on the ground are, as I said, divided. There are the poor and the working class who have actually withdrawn from the streets after they saw that there are facts proving that the revolution has been sort of hijacked. However, they still insist that they need to see reforms. And then we also see protesters who come from upper and middle classes. As we saw in downtown Beirut and in the squares, they have been partying. They've been having free food. Stages were set up. Each of these stages costs at least some $2,000-3,000, if not even more per day. Free food is being distributed and services. So it's obvious that there are foreign hands actually investing in this so-called revolution in Lebanon and with foreign goals.
Now, With regards to the revolution, and now it being called the revolution, and you say obvious foreign hand involvement, especially with food being distributed, and we saw the past couple of days, the call for, ambulances and police to be allowed to go through the protest group and given way to ensure that citizens on the ground don't feel much of the effects of the protest action that is taking place. The resignation of Hariri, what has this done for the government and what's been their reaction so far with the leading parties on the ground?
Well, the first reaction was from the president of the Lebanese Republic, Michel Aoun, who said he is studying Hariri's resignation, but he has not called upon him to move to a caretaker government tonight. So far, we have to wait and see what the reaction will be on the ground and what the reaction will be on the political level. And we have to see how the Lebanese react to the current situation and the updates.
Heba, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there for now.